Welcome, 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 welcome. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you are here for the cultural accommodations to meet children's needs, you are in the right place. If you wanted to take the other workshop, which is understanding the requirements and best practices regarding psychotropic medication, you're not in the right place. You need to go back to the previous room. And the link is on the chat for the previous room. And I want to welcome everyone today. And I want to welcome you all to the Cultural Accommodations to Meet Children's Needs workshops. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Anna Tewsbury. She is a resource parent, adoptive parent, as well as a step parent and FKCE instructor. Anna has been an LA foster parent in Los Angeles County for over a decade. As a multilingual and multicultural person, she has a deep understanding of the importance of cultural adjustment in ethnical and cross-cultural placements. She's very strong and passionate, and she's an advocate for children of different cultures. She has a rich understanding of cultures and has always advocated for the sake of the children. She developed unique and efficient tools and methodologies to help foster families bridge the gap between cultures of the foster parents and foster children, as well as help foster youth to reduce the stress of assimilating into new families, even if temporary, by preservation and development of children's unique cultural identity. In her private and professional life, she's a former TV and radio producer. See, I didn't know that. And proud mother of 7, ages 2 to 22. She's got a YouTube video where she is on the YouTube video with one of our foster youth. Hopefully she'll share that with you. And without further ado, I would like to present Anna Tewsbury, who's also presented at Mission College and various colleges on cultural accommodations to meet the children's needs. Welcome, Anna, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Maria. Nice to see everybody. It's my first meeting doing it for such a nice crowd. So I want to start from what basically cultural accommodation is. Thank you, Mimi. So we all hear about cultural diversity. When I was taking classes as a foster parent, as a new foster parent, we were taught about cultural diversity, but never ever anybody was actually teaching classes about cultural accommodation and what it is. So if we'll start from what it actually means and how it all started, it takes it back to history for year 1971, when some nice professor from United Kingdom invented a theory about cultural accommodation that basically called CAT, C-A-T. And the whole theory started because his wife got sick and she lost her voice. And for a few months of her life, she was whispering. And her husband, professor, just realized that when his wife talking to other people whispering, for some reason, people whispering back to her, even though they have normal voice. And that's how he started developing his theory that calls today cultural accommodation. So cultural accommodation theory is one way to explain how people of different cultures are constantly adapting their communication styles, either in converging, the healthiest ways of communication, or diverging by under-accommodating, over-accommodating, or counter-accommodating, basically embracing the differences. Not always a good idea. So CAT, communication accommodation theory, being used in many contexts, is between cultural ages, genders, and virtual communities. Between cultures, people may become more comfortable with someone who is different culture if they mirror non-verbally, and topic of conversations would be interest of others. Here I can give example when we go and bringing children to visit their parents, and the parents from different culture, can be religious Muslim or religious Jewish people, strongly recommend the foster parent to wear modest clothes. And basically what it says, it's mirroring non-verbally the biological family. It makes things more comfortable and open channel of communication between the foster parent and biological parent. Besides that, over accommodation and under accommodation can be seen a lot when people come. Let's say under accommodation will be more seen when the parent talk to the children, not in a positive way, and sometimes you can see over accommodation when adult children talk to their elderly parents. I think it's one of the best places to see how exactly it works. The second is value of diversity. I think we can learn much more from us people rather than similar to us. And for me, it's a huge opportunity to learn more, to educate more, and create connections with people I would never imagine I will before that. So cross-cultural experience will be great learning opportunity while avoiding ethnocentrism, stereotyping. We should try to eliminate prejudice, discrimination, and racism. But we also should be very aware of our own bias and triggers. And if we find it, we need to fix it if possible. So if we trying to teach foster parents about cultural accommodations, there's outline I created. You can use it, you can create your own, obviously. So I would start from personal introduction and providing details about instructor himself, because I truly believe if we can talk openly about ourselves, we can create more relationship and more channels of communications with others. So we start from ourselves. When I do classes, I talk about myself, and then I'll ask people sitting in the audience talk about themselves. And for my last few classes, I learned that people not really talking about themselves, and they can't really say anything about themselves in short sentences. One of my last classes, I have a lady whom took about 10 minutes after my investigation and interrogation to say that she is Italian, which is so important to say. I would say it probably in the first sentence I would say about myself if I would be Italian, but it took 10 minutes to realize that she is Italian descendant. So we need to teach foster parents to realize what uniqueness they have in them and put it on the board for people to understand and connect. So the second thing will be America's Got Talent. When you ask every student what hobbies they have or their families, can be chess, playing soccer, going out, listening to music, watching movies every Friday. Very important just to create a list of it and put it on the table too. So we can do it. One of my favorite slides, when we present it, I ask questions, I create discussion about it. We'll see how we can do it. Help is just a phone call away. Very important to create resources for parents who takes kids from different culture. The more we have, the better. You'll see the slides and I'll talk about each one of my resources, but I do ask everybody, the more you can find, put it on your list and give it to other people to use. Providing examples from different cultures and customs that are entertaining and educating. Some of them are amazing. I can give you some links. You can watch it. Things that teach us about different things, different cultures, different people, different approach to things. With sense of humor, I learn a lot about it every single day when I watch videos. It just educate me more and give me more tools. Accommodation versus efficiency. Delivering supporting citation from the research. There's not many researchers, but I found a few. I'll use it. I strongly recommend everybody to use it and create links for people so they can really go through researches and read it. Cultural accommodation and human rights, something I didn't know until very recently. Article 22 that talks about Social Security. It's not Social Security as we all mean and understand. It's a completely different one. We'll go through this. And the last one, how we can do it. Presenting slides, closing materials, and discussion. We can go there too. So next slide. Now that's how we talk about ourselves, how we can do it, part one. If we know who we are, we can connect to other people. So if I'll talk about myself, in my presentation, Maria just said that I'm cross-cultural and multi-language person. I got lucky. I was born in Soviet Union. So I spoke Russian and Ukrainian. I'm from Ukraine, countries that everybody talks about right now. So beside that, I have a pretty good knowledge about all other republics of former Soviet Union. So I can easily talk about Armenian, Georgian, Azerbaijanians, Belarusian, Russians, because Soviet Union was a huge melting pot of different cultures, and it's a very positive thing that I took from my childhood. When I was 17 years old, I moved to Middle East, Israel, and I learned Hebrew. I learned some Arabic. No, I don't speak Arabic, but I can understand some of it. I obviously learned about different cultural things and custom of people coming from Morocco, Yemen, Ethiopia. I learned the difference between Jews coming from different countries. I learned the difference between Arabic people coming from different countries. There's a huge difference between Egyptian Arabs and Palestinian Arabs and Jordanian Arabs. There's some different culture we can find in Israel, like Circassian, Druzian. They're not Arabs, they're not Jews, they're just different people with different customs and different language too. So I got lucky. I have all of that in me, and I'm using this to create help and support to other people who get kids from any of these places, because I can provide them with support and information they will not get, unfortunately, from the child services. So if we do it, we put together a list of hobbies also. When you create the list, please talk to your close friends and create the list of what the best thing you can provide to kids coming to your home. Very important. If you know that you can spend hours talking about video games, take the child with video games experience and love and passion for it. If some of you play musical instruments, your family plays musical instruments, and you get a child who is into music, definitely talk about it. And the first day this child cross your doors. If you have somebody who is into sports and you have in your place other kids who play the same sport, please talk about it in the first day. It's opening channels of communication, even if it's different cultural kids. Even if you don't speak the same language, it will open some windows for you to communicate. And then this toughest one, the most tough thing to think about in your families, and I talk about it with foster families, and it's very, very hard thing to do, your triggers. If you have special triggers in your family, you have to discuss it before you get kids in your home. My favorite time to spend is to sit in the forums of foster parents, and many times I would see foster parents complaining about why the extended family suddenly will stop supporting them when they have special child in their care. And I think this thing happens when special triggers trigger something in the memories of your own family. For example, if you have somebody in your home who was sexually abused as a child, let's say my mom was sexually abused when she was a little girl, and she would be living with me in the same home, I would be very concerned to take any child with the same experience to my home before I speak it out with my mom, because it can trigger things, it can become ugly, it can be very tense, and it will not help the child in your care, and it will hurt your family. I can speak about my own triggers and experience. I realized when I was 17 that hearing people speak in German make me freeze, make me terrified. I can call it genetic memory because I'm a Jew. I don't know why. I couldn't deal with it until now. So probably if somebody would call me and say, take this German speaking child to your care, I would try to find somebody else who will take the child. Do not take children to your home that might trigger trauma in yourself or people in your family. Extremely important and should be talked out before it happens, because it will cause trauma in your care and multiply placements for the child. Any questions so far?
No questions, Anna, not yet.
Okay, can we go to the second slide? The next one, I'm sorry. That's one of the amazing places I'll keep as a resource. If you have children that come from any Arabic countries, please use this resource. This is an amazing center in Santa Clarita. They will talk to the children. They'll come to your home. They'll explain you about the holidays in Muslim culture. They will bring food. They will take kids from your home to celebrate holidays in their community. Amazing support. Why do we need them? I use the help first when I got a phone call from social services about 2 children ages 4 and 6 that were Christian Arabs from Egypt. These kids spent 5 months in foster care and already changed 4 different placements. None of them were Arabic speaking and none of them were Christian for some reason, which is easier to find in Muslim families. And I think that just this family they spent time with could not culturally accommodate these kids. We found a home for these children who were not Christian, but Arabic speaking home. And since this day was probably over 7 months ago, these kids in this home, there's no problems, there's no complaints, and they will probably stay in this home forever, which is, I think, the best. So use this place, call them, email them, go there. And I think it's becoming very important right now because as of now, we have a lot of refugees coming from Afghanistan because of what happened over there. This center takes care of about 70 different families as of now. Can happen that kids from this family will end up in foster care, and we need to know more about the culture to accommodate them the best way possible and to create their relationship with their own community. Next slide. This is another resource we can use. Thank you. This center we can use for any African immigrant that's coming right now. I don't know much about African cultures, but this center is extremely helpful. They have people who speak different dialects. They can explain the difference between this country and another. They understand. They can also come to your home. They can provide special clothing. They can explain about food. They can bring food to your home. Please use a center for accommodate kids in your home better if you get kids from different African cultures. Extremely important. Sanaid and Maso is very accommodating, nice and diplomatic person. Personal knowledge. Please call them. Next slide. Becoming very important right now, Russian Orthodox Church in Los Angeles. can answer your questions if you get Russian-speaking children, especially religious children. Russian-speaking children, not necessarily from Russia. We have to know that people who come in from any republics from former Soviet Union speak Russian. So you can get Armenian, Russian, Ukrainian, Belarusian, Georgian, Azerbaijani, Uzbek child, they will still speak Russian. You should all know that. Everybody who's coming from former Soviet Union area still speak Russian, besides their own language. Very important to know. So you can call this church, you can email them. You can come and welcome, they welcome people in their holidays. And they also very accommodating and nice people. Call them if you need it. Next slide. Okay. This is Jewish Center. Also very important to know and call them if needed. I use their support 3 years ago when I got 3 Orthodox Jewish children. They did spoke my language, we spoke Russian, but I'm not a religious Jew, so I'm not keeping kosher in my home. And for the parents of these children, were extremely important to keep glad kosher for the highest level of kosher for the children. So for me, taking care of them, and they were in very bad state, very neglected, and we had a lot of problems. For me, it was a huge relief to receive glad kosher food to my home from these people. And they did it for almost 3 months. It was an amazing help. And also they arranged a party, a birthday party for one of the kids when I couldn't do anything because I was too busy with them. So very good support community will come to your home, will accommodate, will speak languages you need, Hebrew, Yiddish, Farsi, depending on what kind of children you get to your home. When you get Jewish children to your home, also extremely important to know if they're religious or not, and what country they coming from, or their parents. There's a big difference between Russian Jews, Persian Jews, and American Jews. We're all different. If you have any questions, you can call the center and ask. Very supportive people will do everything possible to make your life easier and to accommodate children. Next slide. That's my slide. So if you get any kids from former Soviet Union area or Israel or anything around Israel, any Arabic countries, please, you can use my phone, my email, you can call me. I can give you first instructions, first support, and connect you to people that will accommodate the child in your care the most normal way for them. So if you get placement, Russian, Ukrainian, Belarusian, Armenian, Georgian, Azerbaijani, Lithuanian, Ukrainian, Estonian, Uzbekian, Chechenian, Kazakhstan, Cherkessian. Trust me, all these kids can speak Russian too. Romanian, Czechian, Slovakian, Polish, or Israeli, Jordanian, Lebanonian, Syrian, or Egyptian. You can call me. So I'll offer support 24/7 to people that need. And I answer my phone, believe it or not. Okay, next slide. Something we were talking about in the beginning, I am into history, and I think it's very important to know and provide facts from history, how ignorance can cause war or money to people. So the more we know, the more we learn, the better we live. So one of the examples I'm usually given in 1499 in Venice, in Ottoman Empire, Turkey, they come to some peace terms and agreements. So after they talk about the agreements, the Turkey Sultan asked the Venice ambassador to swear on the bird. And this ambassador, instead of taking it very seriously and maybe suggesting something else to swear on, started laughing into Sultan's face. Extremely bad mistake that caused war between these two countries, and 4 years later, Venice surrendered. Definitely could be done different way and much more peaceful. Next slide. Okay. Another story that cost a lot of money and people's lives, just 2 million francs for killing a dog. So after World War I, Bulgaria was eliminating packs of stray dogs. But Greece, on contrary, used dogs for protection and really loved dogs. So it was long custom in Greece to rescue dogs from troubles. On October 18, 1925, and trust me, you can find it on the internet, so it's a very important thing that happened. So Greek soldier lost his dog. He went to look around and see Bulgarian soldier basically killing his dog. They started fighting. So Bulgarian soldier killed both. Shortly after that, both sides started fighting. And the whole war started. So Greek army started fighting with Bulgaria, pillaging, looting, and leaving a trail of burnt towns and killed bodies all around the country. Greece was looking for help. Yugoslavia was requesting help from France and Great Britain. It's all because of the dog. Probably could be done different way. Turkey was asking help from Soviet Russia and Germany. World was almost on the brink of another world war, just shortly after 1918, right? So with great difficulty, the hostility was resolved. Probably could be done different way. Don't we agree? Okay, next slide. Yeah, in order for us to accommodate different cultures, we need to know history. So we need to be aware of Indian fighting Pakistans, Arab fighting Jews, and otherwise Germans and Russian, Turks and Armenians, Armenians and Azerbaijanians, Greeks and Turks, Albanians and Serbians, and now also Russians and Ukrainians. Regarding this new conflict we have right now, this conflict is much more complicated than can be discussed in media. One of the stories I have related to this conflict, my friend tried to adopt 2 boys from Ukraine just 2 months ago. And before she was adopting them, she received both boys to her home for Christmas holidays, means for 5 weeks. One boy was Ukrainian boy who is from Russian Ukraine, so he spoke Russian. Another boy from Ukrainian part of Ukraine, he spoke Ukrainian. And basically what happened was the 5 weeks they spent in this lady's home in America, they were fighting each other because now they fight in the country and they were raised to hate each other and they were fighting all the time. And basically the adoption fell through. Both boys go back to Russia and now she's not going to adopt them just because of the conflict. Maybe if somebody from Ukrainian side will be thinking about it differently, probably it was better to send 2 boys either speaking Ukrainian or speaking Russian without starting a war. Now both boys lose the opportunity to be adopted in the United States. Just one of the examples. Now, another thing that I asked the administration of this forum to let me do, since the war is right now and many people get frustrated and judge it and other people just for speaking Russian, I really want to mention that this war is much more complicated for people who are from Ukraine or Russia, because there's no pure Russians and there's no pure Ukrainians. All Russians have Ukrainian bloods and otherwise. The families are all mixed There's many Russians that live in Ukraine. There's many Ukrainians that live in Russia. Many of us have people from both sides. It's so complicated. It's so frustrating. People get hurt every single day. So when Russian-speaking people are approached by Americans on the streets over here, and these people telling them, your Putin did this and that, please, they need to be careful. First of all, not every speaking Russian person is Russian. Second of all, there's many Russians that are really ashamed of this war and they don't want to participate in it. Many Russians have Ukrainian relatives and they lose it too. And they can't sleep and they're against this war and they're very frustrated and emotionally destroyed. So I'm asking you, whoever you speak to and talk to about this war, please explain. Personally, very important to me. So thank you for listening to that. Be more passionate to these people. It's very hard. Any questions so far?
No questions so far.
Okay. Next slide. Many people right now crossing the borders from Mexico and coming here. Many of them speak Russian. Russian speaking people, not necessarily Russian, as I told you, but they are from Slavic countries. So one of the customs I was trying to explain and to show that our customs are very different and we can hurt somebody unintentionally just for not knowing things. So one of them is the flowers. In many Slavic countries, it's vital that you know the number of flowers in your bouquet. An odd number of flowers is used for happy occasions, while an even number used for sad occasions such as death. Let's say you bring in an even number of flowers for somebody's birthday. Not a good idea. Might be read as a death wish or threat. Have to accommodate people and think about it. Next slide. Thank you, Jolene. Different customs. Threat or thank you. Something can be threat for one country and thank you for another country. Let's see the examples. Gestures. Afghanistan, looking the index fingers together signify an agreement. The thumb up considered rude and has the same connotation as raising the middle finger. The OK sign can symbolize the evil eye or something more lewd in Middle East. Greeks, an open hand is considered to be very offensive. Who knows? And you're saying horn fingers adopted by rockers as cool sign can mean that you are bad and your wife is cheating on you in many countries such as Italy, Brazil, Colombia, Portugal, and Spain. As much as I know, Russia too. And you say V sign, completely harmless, but considered to be rude and signify contempt against authorities in Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, and UK. Now I want you to look at the picture and you basically, when you see this kind of face, you probably think it's a threat. And you're right if you're in Italia, Sicilia. But let's say we change the face of this person to just calm one, but leave the hand under the neck. What do you think it means if you see a Russian person doing it? You can chat and guess if you want. Wild guesses, what it can mean for you. Calm face, but the same gesture under the neck. Nice try. Again, somebody else?
Carrie put.
Anybody else? Wild guess?
Carrie put, I'm talking, listening to me. Any
Yes.
other guesses?
No?
No.
Okay, then threat. Yes, it's not a threat for Russian. If you have a Russian child in your care and he might do this gesture, please do not get offended. It's basically something good. That means that you fed this child a lot and they can't eat anymore. That's what it means. Nothing else. It's not a threat in Russian culture at all. That means I ate enough, thank you. So that's how we can be different in cultures, and some of the signs can mean completely opposite things. We need to be careful. Similar sign in a silly American Sign Language. Thank you. Not only Russian then. Perfect. Okay, can we go to the next slide? French kisses. Oh my God. So French have specific rules with kissing. The rules differ for men and women. The number of kisses required in greeting varies from region to region. Socially expected to greet each other and social gathering upon arrival. Many kisses on cheeks. You have to do it the right way. Very complicated. There's books written about French customs of kissing. You can see the link on Facebook. Unfortunately, I couldn't find this video in any other place. When you get this presentation into your hands after this day, please copy it and watch this guy. This guy is an Arabic guy from United Arab Emirates. His videos extremely funny, very educating. He talks about different Arabic customs. This specific link talks about kisses. Very funny to watch. Basically, it talks about different signs. So when you kiss as a man, Arabic man, another Arabic man, you have to look in each other's eyes. You have to go in one cheek 3 times and then another cheek. You have to talk if it's a special meeting. So when you kiss each other in between, you talk to each other, how are you? How are you doing? And if you don't do it, it's considered to be rude. You have to look in each other's eyes. In some places in Arabic countries, you have to kiss with the nose. Something you can see in this video too. When you kiss with the nose, you have to look in each other's eyes. Otherwise, you miss the nose and you kiss on the lips. Very bad idea for Arabic countries. But in opposite to this, if you are a woman and you meet Arabic man, you don't look in their eyes. It's considered to be very rude. So you have to know that. Try not to look in their eyes directly. They would not love it at all. Next slide. Can we play that before I talk?
Latino and Hispanic, Hispanic and Latino. The two words are often used interchangeably, but they're not the same thing. The difference lies in the words themselves. Latino refers to geography. People who are from or descendants of Latin America. That's this area here on the globe. It includes most countries in Central and South America, as well as some in the Caribbean. 20 countries total, and some territories like Puerto Rico. The term Latin America was first used by Chilean politician Francisco Bilbao in 1856. It was used to describe countries in America whose predominant languages stem from Latin, so like Spanish, Portuguese, French. That's why Belize in Central America and Guyana and Suriname in South America are not part of Latin America. English is the official language of Belize and Guyana. Dutch and Suriname-Tongo are spoken in Suriname. We've recently adopted Latinx as a gender-neutral alternative to Latino and Latina. In the most literal sense, Hispanic also refers to language, people who are from or descendants of Spanish-speaking countries. That includes places like Spain in Europe and some countries and territories in the Caribbean. It excludes countries like Brazil and others in Latin America where the predominant language isn't Spanish. According to the Cervantes Institute, more than 400 million people worldwide are from Spanish-speaking countries, and nearly 10% of those reside in the United States. That's a lot. And that's probably why the US government introduced the term in the 1970 census during Richard Nixon's presidency. So back to the beginning. The two terms shouldn't be used interchangeably because they're not the same thing. You can be Hispanic if you're from Spain, but that doesn't make you Latinx because you're not from a Latin American country. You're Latinx if you're from Brazil, but you're not Hispanic. But you can be both. I'm both. My family is from Mexico, both a Latin and Hispanic country. Now you know.
Thank you. So this is one of the videos I'm trying to show in my classes, and amazingly, even Latino people say that they didn't know that. So we can't expect from placement workers who call us as a foster parents and say we have Hispanic kids or Latino kids to really know what they're talking about, because they don't know too. And my experience with placement workers, when you talk to them, that they really don't know much, or they assume they know, and it can be completely different culture. So Department of Children's Services are often misidentify children. One of my favorite examples that Maria Granados also likes is about the baby I got to my home as African-American baby. When I looked in his face, I knew that he is not African-American baby, but I wanted to see his parents. I couldn't see his parents for first 10 days. And when I met the mom in Department of Children's Services office, she was blonde, blue-eyed lady that apparently was from Russia. And when I asked her who is the father of the child was a French guy who was born in Tunis, and he was Muslim. So after the baby was sent home, the first thing I did, I called the placement worker and I asked, out of my plain curiosity, why did you decide to put this child as African American? And she said, I don't know, I just looked at him, he was Black. So that's how placement workers identify children. Nothing to do with language, nothing to do with their culture, nothing to do basically with anything. So it's up to us as a foster parent to do our own research and understand where the child is coming from and what is his custom and culture. Can we do next slide? I'm very proud that I found this research. There's little done about cultural dissimilarity in multiple placements. This lady, Ariella, was a CASA worker in Los Angeles County for quite a few years. She learned a lot from her experience, and after she moved to New York State, she had enough time to deal with that, and she made this research that I really personally, and I emailed her and I said thank you for that, because there's not many researches done about this topic, and it's very important. Cultural dissimilarity actually is multiple placements. So caregivers who share similar ethnic background, country, and language negotiate this co-parenting task easier, while dissimilar parent from different basics of ethnicity and country of origin or spoken language may find this task more differently. So from my own experience, when I get parents who speak Russian and speak very little English, my relationship with them from the first few seconds of talking are definitely much closer, open, and better than if it will be with somebody who don't speak their language. So obviously we can't accommodate everybody with the same language, but if we are aware of it, if we know that, we can do it a different way. For example, I have a foster family who took in a Persian-speaking Jewish religious boy. They're not Persian, they're Jewish, they're religion. religious people. So it's good with the religious, but they had difficulty to communicate with the boy because he was fond of speaking Farsi and they don't speak Farsi. So these people connected with Farsi speaking community. And once a week or twice a week by now, somebody from Persian community visit in their house and speak to this child in Farsi. And that's the only thing they do. And they reporting that after they started doing it, their relationship with this child become amazingly open, and the child is improving and having so many progress in his personal, healthy, and educational levels. So we can do it even if you don't speak the same language, but being aware of cultural dissimilarity makes things much better when we communicate. Next slide. From the same research, unfortunately, we don't have many, so only this one. In 2015 study showed that 20% of foster youth change their ethical identity when asked how they identified themselves over a 5 years period, which is twice as high as non-foster youth. Additionally, ethnic identity is most often mismatched, something I just talked about, between how youth self-identify themselves, how county identify them, and how school has classified them. The study showed the problem of having a weak cultural identity and underscores the need to increase support of youth to maintain a strong identity. The mismatch of ethnic identity between the bureaucracy and schools and the person himself leads to missed resources, missed opportunities, and lack of education for foster parents and how they can support the youth. Strong cultural identity will tie to lower rates of depression, anxiety, isolation, and mental health challenges. You can read the rest. My personal experience, I raised a girl who is adult right now. Her name is Abigail. She's my daughter legally. She was born into Jewish Orthodox family, and when she was 6, she was removed from her home. By the time I met her, she was in foster care for 7 years. She spent time in 5 different homes with 5 different religions, none of them Jewish. And by the time I met her, she considered herself Mexican and Catholic, while she's white American Jewish girl. So when she came to live with me, and I am Jewish, but I'm not a religious person, we have to deal with your cultural identity. I was okay with her being Mexican and Catholic, but when she started going to school in our area, she clashed into complete ignorance and misunderstanding from peers because she looked different, she spoke different, and even being fluent in Spanish and speaking with Mexican accent didn't help her at all. She was ridiculed from what she is and what she's trying to be. It took her over 4 years and a lot of support and analysis to understand that she is actually Jewish and religious person. As of now, she is taking Torah classes. She's lighting Shabbat candles. She's still going out on Shabbos, but she is very.
Anna, you muted yourself? If you could unmute.
I didn't touch the computer, sorry, something happened. So as of now, she identified herself as a kind of religious Jewish person with strong ties to Mexican community. And she speaks still fluent Spanish, but she is learning Hebrew, she's learning Farsi because she has linked herself to Farsi speaking community over here when she's learning Torah. And this is her personality and identification right now. Being Jewish, being a little bit of Russian because she lives with me and I speak Russian, being a little bit of Mexican, but mostly she's happy with herself right now and nobody can tell her that she's trying to be somebody else. Very happy person, very completed, but it took 5 years for her to find herself with a lot of ups and downs. So the role of strong cultural identity plays in mental health, self-esteem, and cannot be ignored. And next slide. There's the same research, sorry, we don't have any other researchers, but aspects of youth cultural note as important. Eat their cultural food, speak or hear their cultural language, attend or participate in holidays and age milestone events, exposed to or allowed to wear cultural dresses, experience cultural dancing and music. Over 60% of foster youth consider all those things important, but they don't have access to it. We should help. And one of my favorite examples is how we can accommodate things. Religious Jewish lady got Muslim 13 years old girl into her care while very important Muslim holiday started, Ramadan. She understood she cannot accommodate this girl religious needs. So she called Muslim center, and for the whole month of Ramadan, volunteers from the center were picking up the girls from her home in the morning, spending all day with her, prayer, eating what they need to eat, and doing everything else they were supposed to do, and then bringing her home every single day for a month. After this month was over, they found a better placement for this girl and she went to live with a family. I think it's a perfect example how we can accommodate kids without hurting them. Next slide. Again, cultural dissimilarity, multiplied placements. Cultural dissimilarity is a risk factor. So the more we can do to accommodate the child and his biological family to find some common grounds will be the best. You can read it later. We don't have enough time. So let's go to the next slide. Very important to know, if you remember, I was talking about Social Security. So December 10, 48, something happened in Paris that was extremely important. We're talking about human rights, and thanks to Theodore Roosevelt's wife, finally they ratified the United Nations human rights. So there's special article 22 that states everyone as a member of society has the right to social identity entitled to realization through the national effort in accordance with organization, resources, economic and social and cultural rights indispensable for his development and cultural development of his personality. Next slide. Sorry, Rashid. Yeah. So California is one of the big states that signed this bill too. If you feel like you're unsupported, you can call Board of Supervisors and mention it. If you need more support for cultural identity of your youth, you can fight for it. It's legal. We can do it. Next slide. So what we can do, the last thing, ask for possible background question before placement. Find relatives and friends you can talk to. Talk to the child, very important. Explain that you may not know much about their background, but you can learn. Ask for future forgiveness in case you do something wrong and hurt their feelings. And explain that it's not your intention. Gather all the information. And the most important thing, if you have any special knowledge, speak 4 languages like I do, aware of different customs, traditions, spread the word, let people know who you are and what you can offer. Call placement workers too. This is more thing they can do. I think we out of time. So if you have any questions, you can text me, call me. I'm answering my phone and anytime beside the time when I'm doing lectures. Please
Thank
feel
you.
free to ask questions.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you. We will have a break now. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. If we don't get to them now, we will get to them. I appreciate you. I appreciate your presentation, opening
Thank you so
our
much.
eyes to this. Thank you again. We are now, don't disconnect. We'll be back at 11:50. So please just go ahead and take a break, turn off your camera, turn off your mic, stretch, get out there, put your feet in the grass if you can, and please be back here at 11:50. Thank you so much, Anna, for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So everybody should stay in the room, and then there'll be a link in the chat if you want to switch to the other topic when you come back
Correct.
from break.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie.
Good morning, everybody. Break is just about over, and just want to remind everybody that you'll be invited to either stay in this room or there will be a link in the chat for the other topic. So we'll be sharing that in a minute. Actually, the link is up now. So if you want to go to CSEC best practices for providing care and supervision for children who are exploited, you can go to that, follow that link, or you can stay in this room and I will be introducing Alexis Estwick, talking about the core practice model and what caregivers need to know. All right, I think it's just about time. Yep, 11:50. Welcome back from break, everybody. I'm Julene Aguilar, and I am a regional coordinator from the North Central region. I'm also an instructional specialist at Folsom Lake College, and I've been around for quite a long time. So any of you who are like me will recognize Miss Alexis. We're so happy to have her here today. And I want to share a little bit about Alexis. But before that, I want to make sure that you're in the right workshop. So this is going to be all about the core practice model and what caregivers need to know, which is in the written directives as a required topic. And if you would like to go to the other room, that will be follow the link in the chat, and that'll be to the CSEC best practices workshop. So without further ado, I think we will get started. I'm going to be hosting for Alexis this morning. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, or yeah, I think that's probably the best thing to do. I'll be monitoring that chat. And so I'd like to introduce you to Alexis. So happy to see her here today. So Alexis has a breadth of experience working in human services, social work, higher education, business, and the public sector management for over 4 decades. She possesses master's degrees in both social work and education from UCLA. And she blends her knowledges from both disciplines. So it's so wonderful to have her here today back with us, because I remember her when she was an instructional specialist for us, and she did that for over 21 years. And she, at the same time, she was also acting as a program director and facilitator for life skills training for foster youth ages 16 to 18 who were attending the DCSF, that's in LA, independent living program. So lots of experience with both caregivers and youth. And so she's been developing curriculum for over 20 years. She's been a master trainer for training resource families and working in the Department of Child and Family Services, that's in LA, with staff, social workers and caregivers, as well as LAUSD with educators and staff, as well as working with group homes and foster family agency parents. She's currently a training director for a nonprofit agency, providing training for the short-term residential therapeutic program services for adolescent youth and the RFA programs and for foster family agencies. So she's providing both supervision and coaching. So you can tell she's got a tremendous amount of experience. She's also providing training for resource family approval and prospective resource families. So she's one of us. So welcome, Alexis. As I said, we're so happy that you're here and can't wait to learn more about the core practice model. So take it away.
Thank you so much for your introduction. And I see some names that are familiar to me as I look here. So welcome to everyone. And I know you've been in sessions all morning. So I'm going to be true to myself, those of you that know me, and I'm going to invite you to just take about 30 seconds and think about where you are right now. And if you were going to give a weather report about where you are in this moment, I'd like for you to just put that in the chat.
So do you mean on an emotional level, or do you mean look out the window and tell us
No, where
what's
you
out
are
there?
emotionally, in your head and in your heart. If you had to say where you are today, are you gloomy or are you strong winds coming in off of the north?
I love that.
So just put this in the chat right now. Calm, cool, and breezy, mild and sunny. Storm clouds of exhaustion. I love it. Feeling energized by new content. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and move forward. And this morning, what we're going to, well, we have 2 minutes left of it. We're going to talk about the core practice model. And to give you some overview, we just did our little warm-up activity. And as we go into overview, what we'll be looking at this morning is looking at a brief history of what the core model, how the core model practice came into existence. Then we're literally going to walk through the core practice model's 5 elements so that you can begin to understand how it relates to the families that you serve. And how, especially now that we're moving into first families in California, how the services that our resource parents offer are going to be so vital. And they really need to know how to be able to work with the system in an effective way so that they can advocate for the youth and decrease their own stress, because those 2 things are equally important. And then we're literally going, as I said, walk through that, and then we're going to check back in, see what your takeaway is so that you can have a sense of how you can apply this when you get back to your colleges and be able to support the training that's coming that you're overseeing. So with that said, we're going to move forward and look at the objectives. The objective of the training is to increase knowledge of the core practice model, to appreciate the shared core practice model and the practice elements, and for you to expand your knowledge of how the resource parent can use the core practice model to enhance their practice as they provide for the children. Once again, I'm going to ask you to use the chat and let me know, just kind of get a sense of how many of you have, if you had to rank your knowledge of the core practice model from 1 to 5, 5 being the highest and 1 being the lowest, could you please put that into the chat for me, please? You're going to put into the chat ranking 1 to 5, 5 being the highest, 1 being the lowest, your knowledge base of core practice model. So we're just about midpoint here. So I'm going to start out with giving you a brief history of the core practice model and how it came into existence. Katie, and I'm not going to dive deeply into information. I'm just going to kind of skim the rock across the surface so you have some kind of a context, because understanding, and to be very transparent with you, even though I was on the front end planning of a lot of this, I had forgotten about Katie A. I just kind of, especially my day-to-day work, I work in majority of my work is within a residential facility with STRTP. And this model really drives everything that we do in a very active way. And so I'm immersed in it from that vantage point of practice. And I'd really forgotten all of this till I started preparing for this and felt that I needed to just give you a little snippet of what that looks like. And so Katie A was a 14-year-old girl. And at the time the lawsuit was filed, she had been placed in foster care for 10 years, moving through 37 different placements. Early assessment indicated services were needed. However, she did not receive trauma treatment or individualized mental health services. And the settlement, and that is where the settlement started. So it started out in 2002. And there was a lot of deliberation that went along with it. And 2003, the settlement got put in place. State of California fought to not implement or to negotiate how they implemented it. And that went on for 6 years. Finally, the settlement took place in 2011, which is not on the screen, but that is when the settlement took place. And moving forward, it didn't come into fruition until 2017. And then you had the continuum of care. And if I were in the room with you, I'd ask you to raise your hand how many of you remember that when it took place, because it did impact what we were doing with our families, because we got different kinds of regulations that we need to make sure that they were getting trained on. And so with the continuum of care, that set up the purpose of the continuum of care is to ensure that children, and I'm saying this very superficially, but the bottom line is a key principle is for them to have the least restrictive placement. And so that they're able to heal and thrive. And how that's now moved forward into First Family, where we are today. It affected short-term treatment. That's when we moved from group homes to short-term treatment. And before, you had group homes that stood alone. Now they are connected with Department of Mental Health. And so it's like a day treatment center in many cases. That's how it really operates. And so as we look at this, we're looking at, so that gives you a background. So on the screen, you're saying, what is the core practice model? And it states there that the California Child Welfare Core Practice Model is a statewide effort led by the counties to develop and implement a framework to support child welfare practices and allow child welfare professionals to be more effective in their roles. One of the things that I appreciate about this model is the fact that it's collaborative. So if you look at the intention of the core practice model, the core practice model is intended to guide practice, service delivery, and decision-making. And my observation of it is that when it's implemented, even when it's implemented poorly, it still manages to affect those outcomes. The California Child Welfare Core Practice Model is a statewide effort. And then the framework of the CPM features several theories that help child and welfare workers and leaders better understand those they serve, engage, social workers are familiar with most of them. And so you have a coming together in a collaborative manner between DCFS and DMH and Department of Health Services. All three of those departments work together to implement the core practice model in California. The framework for the core practice model features several theories, and just skip forward one for me. And it's based on the bio-developmental theories that lend insight to the lifespan development and life transition of children, youth, and families. And the way it also allows us to meet the families and the children where they are. Orienting theories related to historical trauma, attachment, and cultural differences. And now they even are factoring in the whole notion of generational trauma. Organizational theories that further understanding about what is needed at the agency level to support and sustain the model. So it seems to always be, it is always getting tweaked. Interventions, theories that address when and how to intervene in order to address and sustain the safety, permanence, and wellness of children, youth, and families. Then we have the 5 core elements: engagement, teaming, assessment, planning, and intervention and advocacy. And I personally really love this. In the next screen, we're going to see this model drawn out. And this morning when I woke up, and I wasn't thinking, but what ran through my mind was that we could call this an ER model, whereas when we engage, we then provide the opportunity for the child and family to regulate, because that's what's always happening or should always be happening. And so the process starts at engaging, and it goes to teaming. Then there's the assessment and understanding, and then there's the planning of the intervention and the implementation, and there's tracking and adapting, and it starts all over again. And yet it is not just a circle. It is need-based, client-centered in that, and it starts with the strengths and needs of the child and their family. And the primary goal is to promote safety. One of the things that I really appreciate about it and observe, because of the environment where I work daily, because I am in a residential environment, you will have a situation that, for example, something happened this morning. Child behaved in a way that was violent. She had a plan that had been in place. However, by this afternoon, they will be calling together the social workers and other persons that are involved in providing services for her to really look and see how can we better meet her needs. And so they go back, whatever plan was in place. Maybe there wasn't supposed to be another CFT meeting, a child and family teaming meeting for a month from now. But because of the incident that took place this morning, that will take place within 24 hours. And the team is already in place looking to see, reassessing need, looking behind the behavior to see what caused the behavior that was exhibited, to put a new plan in place. That is the strength of the core practice model, is that it is always it's always vigilant in assessing what's taking place. And how this also works for our resource parents. In Los Angeles County, this model is also incorporated into the resource family training that we offer them. And when we're doing so, because we only have 12 hours, we don't have time to teach them the child and family teaming model, but we have it incorporated into their training materials. But when they're in their initial training, we literally teach them this process and let them know that this, when used effectively, offers them the opportunity for voice, the opportunity for them to be able to engage everyone in the treatment team, because that's really what we have. Our children, when we're serving the youth in our home, in your home, you're part of that treatment team. And when you understand how this works, other practitioners are not doing to you. You get to be a fully vetted participant in the role of caring for the children. And for me, that's just really important, because I have worked with resource parents for so long, and I see what happens when that's not fully understood, and they then behave in a way that causes them to get an allegation. And when you really understand this, they can work the system and the process better. So let's keep going. So the key integrated core practice model values are engagement. And that's something in LA when we're teaching the RFA training, the resource family training. Engagement, we call it the E word. And we really stress that throughout the entire training, so people really get that engagement. Engagement is taking place as long as you're in somebody else's presence, whether you are saying something or you're not. But the mere fact that you're present with them, engagement is occurring. So with this, the child and family-centered approach to collaborating with family is in making decisions, setting goals, and achieving desired outcomes. This creates trustful working relationships with the child and their family. Assessment and understanding. That means that they're collaborating with a family team to obtain information about their strengths and their underlying needs. And that's something that's a question that is being asked a lot now. When you see a behavior, what is the underlying need? And so that is another treatment or training area for our families, to cause them to be able to educate them so that they can naturally have the habit of looking behind the behavior to determine what the underlying need is. It is a continuous process of discovery with families that leads to better understanding of the events and behaviors that brought the children and family into services. And then the planning, intervention, and service delivery. Tailoring plans to build on strengths and protective capacities in order to meet individual needs for each child and family. And when this is done, it enables the resource parents to be more proactive and have a higher sense of capacity as they engage all of the challenges that they will encounter as they're working with the children that have experienced trauma. Monitoring, tracking, and adapting. This is the evaluating of the effectiveness of the plan, then adapting to challenges and celebrating successes and organizing aftercare support. Transition, the process of moving from formal supports and services to informal supports when intervention, the formal system is no longer needed. So ideally, as the youth is receiving services, they will come to a point where they need lesser invasive types of services or none at all in that particular area. And so everything is celebrated. And the language that is strengths-based language is encouraged throughout the entire process. Teaming, and that's building and strengthening the child and family support system. Listening is key to team. And it's not just listening, it's listening without listening to fix. It's listening to hear and listening to hear needs, not services, but hear needs, so that once again, you can begin to explore the needs behind the behavior that is expressing itself. It establishes and continuously brings together and supports the child and family's team. Facilitates and coordinates sharing of important information among all parties. And so that means you're the one, at least the resource parents are the ones that have the youth 24/7. And their capacity to be able to really identify what they need to note and record, because I know they're taught to record information. And so both with that and for First Family, they need to understand really what they're doing and how they're contributing to the well-being, safety of the children in their care, and how they're supporting the family, and what it takes for them to accomplish that. And when they participate at this level, they get context and they're better able to see what they're doing in the big picture. And it follows through and it admits, and teaming follows through and admits bias, missteps, and mistakes. We all have biases, every last one of them. And we all make mistakes. And we have missteps. That's just living. And it allows us to acknowledge that. And that also models for the children in care that they don't have to be perfect, that they're going to make mistakes. And that's why we're there, or the resource parents are there to support them. When I have 4 daughters, and when I was raising them, you're going through all the parental things. And somewhere along the way, my 3rd daughter was working my very last nerve. And we were looking at something, a nature program on the television, and it had the mother eagle. And the story was that they put barbs in the nest so that as the bird gets heavier, it kind of pushes them out of the nest. And what the mother eagle does, she flies under them and she catches them on their wing and then she brings them back. And so this one daughter that used to always try to push the envelope, I would just look at her and say, I'm getting ready to be a good mother eagle, which would kind of frustrate her a little bit because she was all of 16, so she didn't want to hear that. But again, it modeled for her what happens. You're going to make mistakes, and I'm here to catch you when you do. And that's something that our youth, and I'm going to say our youth, those youth that are in out-of-home care, they don't have the luxury of that typically, especially when they've had multiple placements and they perceive themselves as not having family or being worthy of being lifted back up and buoyed back up. And so being able to model these kinds of behavioral life experiences really support them. Teaming allows all of that. And you can also do this within your own family. You don't just have to wait for something to happen externally. I have used this, that's why I love this core practice model. I have used, all of my children are grown, and there are times when I've had to pull them together when they were not in accord. And I have told them, I'm going to use we're going to have a CFT, which they didn't particularly like, but they got the message. And I used the same process. And so it has benefit across domains. And I have been speaking about this as I've been going along, about the benefits to the caregivers. And so just looking at it, what I prepared, it says that it increases the caregiver's sense of voice and quality of participation in assessing and resources for the child in their care. It increased capacity to collaborate with other providers. Increased opportunity to collaborate with parents of origin, to be professional and partner in the child's care, and increase the capacity to self-advocate. So these are some of the areas in which, and this is literally just the tip of the iceberg of how the core practice model supports the process, and it's a process providing care to children in out of home care. And my observation is that those caregivers that really get this, they then feel empowered and they don't feel pushed around and are less apt to be talked down to and considered as a real partner in the process, because they can approach DCFS and probation when there is an issue with the child and speak about it in their language and place expectations, realistic expectations that are consistent with what the core practice model and CCR are supposed to be about. So at this point, I have done my overview of what I was going to present to you. My question is, do you have any questions? Because I wanted us to be able to have a time to talk about it. This is when I miss seeing your smiling faces.
So we want to remind people to put anything, questions or comments in the chat. Then we won't have to like struggle to speak over each other.
Well, you can raise your hand. You can use the electronic hand feature and raise it. That's another
Yeah,
option.
that's true. Maybe if folks have done some of this with their parents, maybe people can share. We can all learn from each other about, what are the things that you, how are you communicating some of this to your caregivers? Or Alexis, maybe you want to talk more about, what are the specifics that you guys share in your pre-approval?
Okay, in the pre-approval, what we do is we literally train, can you go back to the model? There. It looks different, but we train this model and we train, and the points that we made to the caregivers are the fact that engaging, the importance of engaging. For example, when a social worker comes to the home to drop off a youth, you don't let them just drop them off. It's a case of engaging the caseworker, inviting them in if they were ready to just drop and run, and sit down with them because there's information you want to give them. The smart resource parents that I know, that's when they go over the rules of their home, telephone or device kinds of rules that could potentially be seen as violating the rights of the youth, so that they realize exactly what is taking place, and any other kinds of rules for their household that they want the child to follow to be successful in their home, and have the social worker understand that before they ever leave. So that's where engagement starts. And that actually is a form of teaming, because at that time they're teaming with the social worker to establish the norms of their household. So we teach them that. And because we're usually in a team of someone that is a caregiver, they're able to give their life experiences. I have not ever been a caregiver, and I am grateful for that, because that's something that was not my niche. And I have had a grandchild for 3 months for 3 years. 3 days a week for 3 months, which caused me to experience a great amount of empathy for relative caregivers in that brief period of time. And so that's my experience that way. My children were adopted by my husband at that time. And so I know what it is to be an adopted family and to have other members be part of the family, blended. And so I have that, but I've never done that 24/7 and birth parents, never done it. And with all these years of listening to stories, I still don't know what that feels like. So I don't talk about it in that way. And so we teach, and we talk about all of that in our RFA classes. The assessing is done with a tool that's called the CANS. That's the formal assessment that takes place. That is done by a mental health practitioner, and they then provide, and it does a deep dive. It looks at every person that's going to come in contact with that child to see, and family, to assess where they are and what each person's strengths and needs are totally. And that information is given back as feedback to the family members and to the caregivers. Now, the caregivers don't get that in-depth information, but if you know it took place, you can then ask. That's the empowering part. When you know it's there, that's something that they can begin to ask for. What is, and I'm sure if they ask, what is the assessed need for the family? It's going to take some social workers back because they don't expect to get that quality of language and questioning. And another part of this that we train about is I give the same example that I gave you. It's usually something fictitious where the child engaged in the behavior. The plan was to come back and assess in 3 months. And here we go, oopsie daisy, we have to come back and look at it. And the child has the right to say we need to go back. The birth parent has the right to say we need to go back. So anybody in the continuum of service or being impacted can ask for a redo of this process. And even though I'm describing to you the CFT, the child and family teaming, this is the, how can I put it? That is the component of core practice model that resource parents will see and get to engage in hands-on. The rest of this is taking place all the time in the background. It's like when you're on your computer and it says that something's in the background running, this is running all the time. And if you don't think so, you'll be, at some point, you'll see where it pops up. But it's in LA County, and I have been working with LA County intimately since 2002. And I've gone through, I think this is probably my 4th thingy that they've had, and this is the one they really are very meticulous about, because everybody has to do it. Everybody has to do it. And I believe that when I say everybody, DCFS, DMH, probation, DSS, everybody has to engage in this. And as a result, and it also requires that you identify the child's people as and that can be the teacher, the coach. It can be, for example, where I work, it could be one of the police officers. Because I happen to have gone by the house. I have not been working in the houses. I've been at home because I'm over 65, so I get to work from my home. I'm so excited about that. But at any rate, I was doing something else. And I called into the office to check because I was supposed to do supervision with someone. And I got a direct stab. And I could tell she was in pain. And it was a case of, I asked her what was going on. I'm also a yoga therapist. And so I told her, okay, I'll come by and I'll do some work with you to help diminish the pain. So I came by and I was doing work with her, and in comes the police officer, which is not a strange thing. And he was coming in to check to see if somebody who had AWOL, if she was back and if she had gone to school. And it was the week before the Super Bowl. And I mentioned to him, I said, so are you checking on them also around CSEC? Because it's going to go up high and we're right here near Inglewood. So it's a high probability our kids are going to be getting recruited. And he looked at me like a calf looking at a brand new babe. He said, huh? I said, yes, sir. Our youth so I got to educate him for a minute. But if I was going to have and he was genuinely interested. So he's somebody that could potentially, as a community member, be invited in to sit on that child's CFT. That's what I like about it, because it allows you to broaden the net of who are involved in the care of the children in the families. This also happens with children living in single family homes or small homes, which your families are living, that's how they're providing their service. The difference is when you're working within a residential facility, it's written down in the rules, these are the things that you will do. Resource parents, on the other hand, they don't have the same exposure, and they don't have the benefit, typically don't have the benefit of really understanding how it all comes together. And so for me, when they can understand this, and we do a pretty good job of sharing this, but we don't have enough time to dive deep in it, so they get additional trainings in it. When they can understand this, you can see lights going on. You can see people understanding how when they felt not heard before or talked down to, or different kinds of behaviors that were not supportive of the role of resource parents. This gave them that little nudge and it gave them value, a sense increased value that let them realize, okay, I can speak up. And this is what's supposed to happen. And I can use this model to get what I need. That's the important thing. It's that whole notion of empowerment and understanding, because oftentimes people are told something to just go do it. And so we expect them to just get the information, believe us, and go do it. Whereas if they understand what they're doing and what's in it for them, the with them, higher the probability that they're going to, everybody wants what they want. That's just the world. Everybody sitting here knows what they want. They want to get it the way they want to get it. And so and that's how I present it, as a vehicle that you can use to access the resources you desire and move towards your desired outcome from a place of authority. I feel, and when they understand this, that it is that background that's running. So when they get the CFT, when they get an allegation, something went run amok with this. Something went awry with this. And so if you understand that, that is another way that they're more apt to not make those mistakes that they didn't realize was going to be a mistake. Is that answering your question?
Yeah, very helpful. Anybody else have any questions or anything for the chat?
Says maybe we can discuss how RP can use the CFT as a way to reinforce. Okay, are there any checkoffs to ensure CPM is being practiced? The checkoffs, I like this is my little roadmap. And so, who asked that question?
I think that was an individual question just to you.
Okay.
I don't see that.
Okay,
You know what,
so,
Alexis, it's Maria, and I did ask you the question. I just privately chatted to ask the question. Just it's hard. I love it. I mean, I think this is a great model. I'm hoping that is there a checkoff to ensure I think resource parents are doing it, but is DCFS doing it, right? So we want to make sure that we're all on the same
yes.
team. We are teaming. Yeah. So
And-
that's what I'm alluding to.
Okay, thank you. And so I'll say what I said before. If I know, example, when I've asked the question and have heard, because I also monitor and I train classes. And so the last time I asked the question, how many of you, the question had to do with when the child is placed, how many of you engaged when I brought up the note, that's what, when I brought up the notion of engaging the social worker at the time of placement, I got a very interesting response, which was true for more people than not. And it was the case of, oh, they just dropped the kid off. or they just meet them at the door. There was not, and this other lady said, oh no, they have to come in. We have to sit down. We have to have a conversation. She said it just like that. These are resource parents that I was training at a community college. And so it caused me to realize that some people get done too, while others require the engagement. And so I developed a training called engagement, and whatever it is of engaging, because I realized that people do not engage. Some of it is personality, some of it is culture, some of it is just getting the task, being task oriented. So it's not a good or bad thing, and it is something that always needs to happen. And based on culture, personal style, some people will do it naturally. I had an accountant back in 70 something when I started working in an agency. When I would go to him, and he knew I was coming to see him because we had an appointment, I had to go through, hello, how are you? How are the children? How are your children? We had to go through that whole little ritual before we sat down to do numbers. That was engagement. I was not getting anywhere until I did that. And that's what caused me to realize, oh, this is what I need to do in general. And so I started becoming more mindful because I was being task oriented. I was just getting the job done. And I learned that when I engage people, I'm able to get more of what I need to get done in a more gracious way and more ease, typically. And engaging when you're getting a placement, you need to know that that needs to take place. That's a handoff. And so there needs to be that kind of understanding. When you know it's supposed to happen and it doesn't happen, that means you can't leave till you, like that lady said, you're not leaving until you come in here and sit down. We have to have a talk about this. When I call the social worker and say, Johnny just tore up my living room, and the social worker says, well, did you take him to the therapist? And you said, yes, he has a therapy appointment, but I'd like to call for a CFT. Because we need to understand this, because this cannot continue to happen. That to me is the checkoff becomes just following this. Because if you know that the social worker should have then said, we need to pull the team together, we need to have a conversation. We need to speak with the therapist, we need to speak with da-da-da. If he has visitation, the parents need to be, because it's child and family. Theoretically, the meeting should not take place without child or family. So everybody needs to be there because he just tore up your sofa. And so that becomes the checklist. And then we need to assess. So if they have the team, and this happens, they'll have the teaming, and they don't really want to bite the bullet for really what needs to happen to Johnny. Johnny really needs to go to a higher level of care. But they really don't want to do that because they're losing beds. I'm just being real. So with that said, she doesn't have the conversation. Your job is to say, so how are we going to assess this? If you know this, you can call for it. That's the empowering piece of it. And so that's something that could be developed for caregivers, is a checkoff with the understanding, or it could be taught from that concept. How to establish authority, how to sustain it by understanding this and where it shows up within the day-to-day activity of caregiving and making sure that it happens. Is that answering your question, Maria?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. And again, I put in the chat about engagement and the key, we're so 15 years ago, I would have called you if I needed something. Now we text.
Yeah.
So we've become the irony of connection with social media now is actually disconnecting us more. And so we really need to redefine or maybe do more training on engagement so that because we've lost that. We really have lost that.
when I did the training on engagement, it was really very well received because everybody is in a different place with it. And because for many people, they really don't think about it. And so it gave them 3 hours to talk about it and be with it and see how it could simplify their lives, both within foster care and in your everyday experience. That can happen with you at the grocery store. When you're talking to the person on the phone that is the gatekeeper between what you need, and they're tired and hangry, and you can speak to them in a gentle voice and ask for what you need. And when they bark back at you, still maintain poise and say, you know, what something in them that just tells them that you appreciate the fact that they're there. Because when I call someplace on a Saturday and Sunday and somebody picks up the phone, thank you so much for being there on the weekend. They might not have heard that all day long. Now, you know, I'm going to get what I want. You know, and I made somebody else's day. You know, so, and it so becomes, if they can begin to have that become habitual. And even within electronic media, you can tell when somebody is hangry with you, and you can tell when they're happy with you. And so even I end up wordsmithing, I put down what I have to say, then I go back to the front end and I put the front end stuff on there that then does the engagement piece. So you can do engagement on your text. You just don't jump into the message. Say good morning, good evening, or whatever kind of salutation that you have based on your relationship with that person to cause that engagement to take place. That and be conscious of the fact that that supports regulation, and it supports rapport building. And that's what we need to do. We need to be able to know how to do that. I mean, the resource parents have so many people coming to their homes, especially within that first 30 days, not to mention what else they have going on. So if they can develop the skill of being able to engage those persons coming in a way that establishes rapport, that allows them to move things along with greater ease. And so,
Great.
You were going to say something, Julie.
Oh, I was just gonna, it sounded like you were wrapping it up or ready for, you know, any other questions or comments. Let's see if there's anything going on in the chat. And you know, this is just sparking for me just how listening to all this, it would be wonderful if we could, maybe some of us could get together and really create maybe a concrete list of what engagement could look like for caregivers and, you know, help create that sort of checklist that Maria was talking about, you know, and educating more about the CFT. So caregivers know, you know, what to anticipate, how they can participate, you know, what they might be asked or what they can ask. So give them some real concrete tools in how to participate in the whole process.
And the other part about a child and family teaming is that the caregiver may not be invited because the child has the right to do that, and for them to learn how to be with that without having their feelings hurt.
Absolutely, you're right.
So the child has complete control here. And that's why it's so important for them to really understand all of it and understand the importance of rapport building. Sometimes they don't want you there because they know that you're going to call them on their stuff and they want to tell a lie. It's just that simple. They want to tell a story that they know is not the truth. And if you're there, they're going to get called on it. You know, and it's not about you. It's just, they don't want to be with you anyway. They want to be with their parents. You know?
Absolutely.
So,
well, thank
you. Rhonda's agreeing with you that would be really helpful.
Yeah. And Alexis and I spoke, you know, we were talking about how maybe she could come back to one of our FKCE monthly meetings and talk about some of these concrete real concrete tools as well. So that would be super helpful. So I think, folks, that we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much, Alexis, for sharing all of this information. Oh, the takeaway. Did you want to do the takeaway?
Yeah, I want to do the takeaway. And so my invitation to you, collectively and individually, is to list at least 3 things of what did you learn, if anything, and what are you going to do with it. Hopefully you gave up 45 minutes or 50 minutes that of your valuable time, that you got something, and just take a moment to just state how you plan to do it and what you'll do differently.
Maybe folks can put that in the chat.
That would be great.
Yeah, something that you learned, something you're going to apply. You know, anything that you're going to do differently.
And
I
then
know-
differently could even be that which you have on your, because it's time to start doing training plans. It might
Right.
even look like what kind of classes that you can offer that are slightly different enough, like what you had offered before, but has just a different twist on it that allows this information to be infused into it.
Yeah, so I see Rhonda says, this has helped her fit core practice model training requirement from the written directives into their program plan with some concrete ideas. Wonderful.
Right.
Patty says she would like to do, whoops, try to get my,
Engagement training. Yes. Yes.
I'd like to do engagement. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, you know, for some of us, it comes so naturally and we don't realize how some people really have to be explicitly trained on, like, this is what it looks like, this is what it sounds like. So there's always value in that. We can't assume that everybody knows. Cheryl said she knew most of the content, and as an advocate, she will keep trying to get DCSFs to follow it.
And because I know Cheryl, I know she's going to do that.
Yep. And Maria says she likes the benefit of core practice model. She's going to develop a checklist and discuss engagement in her trainings. Yeah, sounds great. Some really concrete stuff. Okay, some folks might still be typing, or maybe their brain is full at this point. We've been sitting for a long time now.
Yeah.
Thanks for hanging in there with us, everybody. And thank you so much, Alexis. Round of applause. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your experiences. Just really benefit from hearing from someone who's in the field and applying all this. Thank you so much. And here's Alexis's reference sheet or sources. Thank you for sharing that. And just to remind everybody, these are going to be, all the materials are going to be in the Google Drive that Rena has set aside. So if you didn't catch the link earlier, I know that it will be shared out again. So just don't forget, there's all kinds of materials in there that we can go back to, the slides and all kinds of stuff. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today for day one. I know I've been inspired. I hope you've all been inspired. I find these very energizing and just always sparking new ideas. So if you would like to hang in there with us, there's going to be office hours afterwards. So go ahead and follow the link in the chat back to the main room where we'll be having office hours, and regional coordinators will be there. We've got some topics we would love to talk with everybody about. One of them would be, transitioning back to in-person training. Another one would be, we're really in the throes of figuring out another formula for funding. So we would love input from folks. So feel free to join us if you'd like to. Otherwise, we will see you at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. But thank you again for a great day, and look forward to seeing everybody either for the next hour or tomorrow. Thank you so much.